playing next to the one and only Serena Williams. So what else I can do? Just enjoy, trying to do, the things she told me to do. And,
Do you listen to Serena?
obviously.
Alcaraz just broke a 5-month silence, and the way he chose to break it might blow up in his face. 5 months without a single match, and when he finally stepped back onto a court, he didn't tune up somewhere quiet. He walked into Arthur Ashe Stadium for mixed doubles, standing next to Serena Williams under the brightest lights available, for a match that doesn't even count toward the title he's trying to defend. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the person who came to his defense made an argument almost nobody expected, maybe not even Alcaraz himself. First, understand who we're talking about, because the scale here matters. This isn't some journeyman quietly working his way back. Alcaraz is the reigning US Open champion, a 7-time Grand Slam winner ranked world number 2. He hadn't played a competitive point since April. A right wrist injury cost him the French Open, his Wimbledon title defense, and every hardcourt Masters event on the way into New York. 5 months of nothing, and then it ended without warning. His actual comeback wasn't a private practice session behind closed doors. It was Fan Week, cameras rolling everywhere, with Serena Williams making her own first US Open appearance in 4 years standing right beside him. The moment that pairing hit the court, criticism started, and it hasn't let up since. Before going further, here's exactly what happened, because nothing that follows makes sense without it. Alcaraz and Williams opened with a win over doubles specialists Joe Salisbury and Neil Skupski, 5-3, 4-1. 2 days later, it was over, a quarterfinal loss to Bianca Andreescu and Diego Schwartzman, 5-4, 4-1. 1 win, 1 loss, a quarterfinal exit in an exhibition-style event with zero bearing on his actual title defense. That's the entire result. Nothing more. Remember that, because it's about to get buried under 2 very different accusations. The first accusation, he gambled with a wrist that still isn't proven healthy. This is the same wrist that just erased 5 months of his season. Every outlet tracking his recovery noted how cautiously his team handled it, skipping tournament after tournament purely to protect it. So when his first move with that wrist wasn't gentle hitting but live competitive points in a packed stadium, the question was obvious. Why take that risk here, instead of saving it for the tournament that actually matters? It's a fair question. Something serious enough to wipe out 3 surfaces of a season deserves scrutiny over any unnecessary strain. The second accusation cuts deeper. Some critics didn't stop at physical risk, they went after motive. The theory was that a high-profile mixed doubles pairing with the biggest name in the sport's history, inside a made-for-television, sponsor-friendly showcase, wasn't preparation at all. It was a marketing obligation dressed up as a match. Critics pointed to the cameras, the crossover star power, the way the whole spectacle pulled attention away from the actual singles draw, and reached a verdict. Alcaraz wasn't out there for himself, he was out there for partners, broadcasters, and brand. Some went further, predicting it would catch up with him, that he'd burned unnecessary risk on a match that didn't count, and it would end in an early singles withdrawal. Notice what that's really claiming. Not that he made a mistake, but something colder, that his own comeback wasn't really his. What makes this harder to dismiss is that Alcaraz didn't deny how rough it looked. After the opening win, he admitted it himself, that everyone could see how nervous he was, that he double faulted on the very first point, and that after nearly 5 months away, he'd almost forgotten what it felt like to simply step onto a court. That's not a publicist smoothing things over. That's a 7-time major champion telling you, unprompted, that it wasn't smooth. The eye test matched his words. His serve looked visibly slower than usual, and there were stretches in both matches where Williams appeared to be carrying the partnership. By this point, both accusations look solid: a fragile wrist, visible rust, a sponsor-friendly spectacle, and a player admitting in his own words that it didn't feel like an ordinary match. Which is exactly when someone who's actually lived through a Grand Slam campaign stepped in, and what she said wasn't the defense anyone expected. Former British number 1 and world number 4 Johanna Konta went on Eurosport and said plainly that she didn't understand the criticism at all. But watch how she defends him, because it's not the usual approach. She doesn't fight the sponsorship accusation. She doesn't deny the hype, the cameras, or the commercial angle. She agrees with almost all of it. Then she flips the entire argument. She said she didn't see anything wrong with looking at it that way. The critic's own weapon, that this was about brand, hype, and image, and her response was essentially, so what if it is? She wasn't finished there. Underneath the hype argument, she made a completely separate case, one that had nothing to do with strategy, risk, or sponsorship. Her read on Alcaraz was that he played without inhibition, not chasing a milestone, not performing to prove anything to anyone, simply enjoying being allowed back on a tennis court after 5 months of not being able to play. She pointed out he's already on pace to challenge the greatest players the sport has ever seen, so one mixed doubles run, win or lose, was never going to define that legacy. What struck her, watching him, was the freedom in it, a player who looked happy just to compete again, whether or not it was his sharpest tennis. Sit with that, because both accusations start to fall apart under it. The physical risk argument assumed Alcaraz was gambling with a fragile wrist for no real reason. Conta's read says the opposite, that he chose the lowest risk format available specifically so he could start competing again before the full weight of a Grand Slam draw landed on him. The sponsor motive argument assumed there had to be something cynical underneath. Her answer is almost aggressively simple. Maybe there isn't one. Maybe he just wanted to play tennis again and he was finally allowed to. Commercial appeal and genuine joy aren't opposites, they just happen to land on the same court in the same week. Here's a detail almost nobody puts in the headline. Every prediction that he'd withdraw was made before he'd played a single point of the tournament he was supposedly jeopardizing, not during it, not after it, before it had even started. Days out from his opening singles match, Alcaraz has shown no sign of pulling out. To be clear, none of this guarantees the wrist survives 2 full weeks of best-of-5 tennis. Nobody, including his own team, has claimed that it does. 5 months away is 5 months away, and the real test hasn't happened yet. But there's a massive gap between this carries real uncertainty going forward, and this was a reckless, cynical decision built around sponsors. The first is just sport. The second is the version of the story that spread fastest, and it's the version that fell apart the moment someone who's actually lived through this looked past the headline. So what actually happened? Alcaraz walked back onto a court beside one of the greatest players the sport has ever produced, in front of a crowd that turned an exhibition doubles match into one of the most watched moments of the entire lead-up week. He admitted exactly how nervous it felt, and by his own account, that nervousness lasted a couple of games before Serena Williams made it easier for him. Was it strategy? Was it sponsorship? Or, as Conta suggests, was it simply a player who's happiest with a racket in his hand finally getting that back? The scoreboard reads the same either way. Criticism like this always has its loud, immediate moment, the way it does in the first 48 hours of a story like this. But the only thing that actually settles anything is the part no double scoreline can predict, what he does when the tournament that really counts finally begins.